Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining me here today. If you will, or would like to, follow along in the book of Genesis, chapter number 21. We'll begin in verse number 31. Genesis 21, beginning in verse number 31. If you will, like, share, comment, and then we will read these words here in verse 31. It says, "Therefore that place was called Beersheba, because there both of them swore an oath. So they made a covenant at Beersheba. Then Abimelech and Phicol, the commander of his army, rose up and returned to the land of the Philistines." I hope you humor me just a little bit here. As we've been doing this now for quite some time, don't even remember when it started, I guess back at the beginning of COVID. There have been days, there have been long stretches where I have kind of really tried to maybe bore down a little bit into the meanings and some of the words in the Greek or the Hebrew, and tried to really dig down. A lot of times, like today, not going to do that. I'm not going to talk to you so much about what the word Beersheba means or anything like that. I want to tell you what strikes me, just my thoughts as I read these words. I see here again Abraham and Abimelech. They come to a place where they make a covenant, where they seal their agreement, their covenant, and Abraham calls the place Beersheba. Now, what strikes me there as I think about that is Abraham and Abimelech could have walked up, shook hands, kissed on the cheek, whatever the custom of the time was, and said, "All right, that's a good deal, I agree," and went on their way. But they built a place. They named a place. They gave it a place, Beersheba. This is a place where a commitment was made. They're naming the place where they have made this agreement. This agreement is important, and Abraham doesn't want to forget this place. He doesn't want to forget this covenant. We know by now, after walking with Abraham for a good way in his journey, that there are times when Abraham didn't maybe do just what he ought to do. But here he says, I want to remember that covenant. Anytime Beersheba comes up, he's going to be mindful of this commitment that he is making. By naming it, he has said, I'm making a commitment before God, before my friends, before witnesses. I have made a commitment. We live in a world where a man's word isn't worth much anymore. Many of you that are joining me this morning, you're old enough to remember a time when I believe the way the statement was made was a man's word is his bond. There were big business deals made simply on a handshake. Two men would come together, they would agree, I'll sell you this amount of land for this price. They shook hands, and that was as good, that was as sure as 27 legal documents is today. A man's word was his bond. He was only as good as his word. There's several old sayings along those lines, and some of you remember that time. That you take a man, you could take a man, and if he said something, most men, I know there've always been liars. There are liars all the way back here in the book of Genesis. But for the most part, a man's word was good. Today, again, it's not so much. Sometimes not even among those who claim Christ as their Savior. I just want to take these couple of verses and remind us all to be good to our word. to honor our commitments, that to the best of our ability, if we say something. I heard something one time that really bothered me. I've probably shared this with you before because it stuck with me, and it really bothered me. There was a business deal that went south, and later on it was being hashed over. He would eventually end up in court, and I heard one of the people, the complainer, I guess, to the other, speaking of the other person, was, I didn't know he claimed to be a Christian. If I'd have known he claimed to be a Christian, I'd have never gotten this deal with him to begin with. And that stunned me. I grew up, and I'm of the mindset that that's the kind of person I want to do business with. But this man had a perception of Christians. I can't trust him. Folks, we need to work on that. We need to be good to our word. I heard another person say that he never does business with fish people. With fish people. What do you mean? He said, folks who put the sign of the fish on their business cards, on their trucks, on their signs. He said if they have to advertise that they are supposedly a believer, then their life probably doesn't show it. He said, I want to know that they're a believer without seeing the fish on their sign. Folks, people ought to be able to hear our word, see our word, hear our actions, see our actions, hear our word, and know that we're fish people. We shouldn't have to put up a sign. Think about it. Have a good day. We'll see you here tomorrow morning.